Hi everybody, it's Robert Earl out here at the Eco Ranch in far west Texas. I'm standing out here with my latest project, Monty the Monza. Monty the Monza. I didn't name him that, Debbie did, so don't blame me. It's a Corvair. If anybody knows anything about a Corvair, that's my project car. We needed a second car. I came into some unexpected money, ran out and bought this. That's an adventure that's for a completely separate video. But standing out here because Monty is responsible for me making a side trip that I think is really special, that enabled me to put together what I think is a video that will help what I call the wind turbine war, or at least bring a lot of things into perspective for you. Now, when I'm pointing at you, I'm not speaking to the guy living in his mother's basement that's out there saying Thermodyne is crap, Missouri Wind and Solar will eat your babies. That's not the guy. You basement dwellers, go have a ham sandwich, talk to your mother, do something else. I'm talking to you folks that want to buy a wind turbine. You people that are looking to live sustainably. This video is directed at you to help you to make some decisions based on some of the outrageous crap you see in about 500 videos from people that don't even have a dog in the fight. They just like to cause trouble. But it's a long video, so I've scripted it, I'm going to hold the paper here because I can drone on and on and on like I'm doing right now. So I'm going to grab my script and we'll get running. And I'm going to lean on Monty while I do it. Today I'm going to present a different kind of video to you than usual. It is, as my name says, though, my 5-year review of my experience and my Thermodyne wind turbines. That will be central to the video. I'm going to show you what I have experienced here in my desert on Thermodyne wind turbines. The actual review is going to come near the end. This is going to be my last video about wind turbines and particularly about the wind turbine war. And I'm also removing my other wind turbine videos, and then we'll do a little bit more about that at the end and why. But there's a lot more to this video, and I hope that those of you who are considering a life that's more sustainable and debt-free will get the most out of what I'm presenting today. Also, there is a lot in here that's going out to the combatants in the wind turbine war as well. You folks living to live off-grid and debt-free might find that a lot of this isn't relevant. But knowing which equipment to buy when your resources are limited and who to buy them from is very relevant, as is truth. It may be long, not so visually interesting, as most of it's going to be me standing somewhere. I may snap my fingers and go to a different point, but it's going to be long and not so visually interesting, but the information is important and worth knowing. So let's grab a beverage or a snack and get going. So with the Eco Ranch in the background, first of all, I got to tell you, every one of my videos is not monetized, and if you saw that they might have been with ads in them, they're no longer monetized. I never did it right anyway, so I never got a penny off of it. But you know what I mean when I say monetized. That's that irritating little ads that pop up, click on an ad, go and somebody tries to sell you something. More importantly, when we're talking about monetization, the owners of the video make a tiny bit of money every time you click and go away and look at the product that's being sold. So, creating a watchable video, fact or fiction, is of most concern. And I'll tell you who comes to mind on this is a girl called Happy Slip that has made a ton of money and gotten herself relatively well known for having monetized YouTube videos that have really helped her and her family out. But when you're monetizing and you're trying to make sure people watch it, factuality is going to take a backseat to watchability. No money, no bias, so no money here, no monetization here. Now also, in this video, and you've probably noticed it already, it's got the ratings disabled and the comments are moderated. Now, I don't do this so that only positive comments appear, but I do it to address one of the many very, very important points that I'm going to address in the video, and that's SEO Clerks, VAGEX, and the host of others that perform this really despicable but completely legal service. Despicable but legal is going to be a recurring theme in the wind turbine war and in this video. Like most of you, I thought ratings and comments were a result of real interested people. It turns out that SEO Clerks, VAGEX, and others actually sell comments and ratings for a price, and a fairly low price at that. This means when you see a video with hundreds of, hey, thumbs up, or terse little comments from no-profile people, they have been bought. And the more you want, the more you can spend for either good or bad ratings. And comments. So much for depending on what others think to help you make a buying decision, because somebody's buying these thumbs up and, wow, where can I buy one? Those kind of comments. Despicable as it is, and believe me, I personally think that that's absolutely horrible. I'm looking at these comments, trying to get what, and the buzzword now is trending. What's trending? What do people like? And here people are buying the comments. But it's completely legal, and the only possible punishment's coming from YouTube if a monetized site is buying views, or if a competitor is doing it to cause trouble, and that is done. And I know personally from the people that I spoke to in preparing this video, that's done. Good and bad comments. So what can you do? Well, when you're looking at people and reading the comments, which we all do, watch for comments like, awesome! Where can I buy one? Great! And things like that, little 1-word or 5-word things from people that have absolutely, well, they have no profile photo, period. If they have no profile photo, they're fairly new, and they're leaving these little 1 and 2 or 5-word comments, the odds are it's a purchased comment. Now, ratings are a lot harder to spot, and I really didn't get into that. We're getting into areas here that have absolutely nothing to do with living debt-free off-grid. So I just recommend you ignore the ratings and go ahead and read on and find the real comments and go from there. Now, there's a lot of wind turbines out there for sale. An increasing number are coming out of China. While most are from, or at least assembled, here in America, now, but looking at eBay, YouTube, and searching the internet, you're going to find pretty much 3 major players, and these 3 are the focus of the entire wind turbine war. Now, these 3 primary players are Thermodyne in California, located in Lancaster, Big Sur, somewhere like that. They operate also under several other names. Another one is Missouri Wind and Solar out of Seymour, Missouri. Also with other names. Nothing wrong with having DBAs. I've had 2 or 3 myself at one time with the same company. And there's a minor seller who makes this list more as a crap stirrer than as a viable source for wind turbines. I'll discuss him first so we can get on to other matters that really are more important. And this minor one, is Hurricane Wind Power on the East Coast. Now, he's primarily a Missouri wind reseller, but he also tinkers and cobbles some equipment together in his basement where his entire business is located. He has some decent videos on YouTube under his own name, but the real problem, and the reason this angry little man even gets a mention here, is his other videos. Tony Jones, Hurricane Wind Power, has several other YouTube channels like Scam Busters, Wind Turbine God, and more, where his goal is to trash his main competitor, Thermodyne, repeatedly and profanely. These videos have pirated content from owners of competing wind turbines, including my content, and twist that meaning to run down and trash Thermodyne primarily. I mention him for this unethical practice, and I recommend that he be avoided at all costs. Besides, if you wish to purchase a Missouri wind and solar product, why not go right straight to the manufacturer, not a markup happy reseller with a horrible attitude and a basement business? Okay, so the real 2 who get the most YouTube attention are Thermodyne and Missouri Wind and Solar. Neither one is innocent of trashing the other, with soldiers on each side rushing up to debunk or discredit anyone with anything positive to say. A vicious circle was started, who knows where or when, and continues, and potential buyers are subjected to accusations of throwing dead animals in driveways, frivolous lawsuits, even baby eating. course, all this is completely ridiculous, but so far only one combatant in this war has been man enough to completely stop the foolishness and remove his videos. But there is hope. And in the meantime, maybe this video can help a little bit. Or maybe it'll just stir the bastards up and make them all the worse. If that's what happens, I'm out of it after this video anyway, because I have more important things to do. But I think this is important that you folks hear from somebody who honestly is completely unbiased. Now, talking about unbiased, my 6 wind turbines were purchased from Thermodyne. Now, I went back for the reason I'm ever a repeat customer anywhere. Customer service. I was and still am treated very well by Thermodyne, even before I posted 2 positive videos about them. By the way, I'm going to say more about these videos a little bit later. I've had products repaired. That's when I painted them green. I had them repaired. I've been given advice, return shipping paid, items even sent to me for evaluation. I can say nothing bad about Thermodyne's customer service. Product performance is a little bit different though, and let me explain while I'm going to be discussing a few other points. I installed my wind turbines exactly as a manufacturer instructed. And I was happy enough with the output so long as I had a small battery bank. It seemed to me, based on how they charged that small battery bank, that they were performing very, very well. It was only when I bought my 4 huge forklift batteries. Now that's 6,600 amp hours at the 20-hour rating. 6,600 amp hours. That I noticed that something wasn't quite right with my power output. Now this brings up my next point about wind turbines, power ratings. My turbines are rated by Thermodyne at 500 watts, that's 2 of them, 1,000 watts, that's 2 more, and 1645 or 85, that's 2 more, and I think he even kicked up the rating on those 2 to 2,000 recently. They're rated at that. At 70 miles an hour. 70 miles an hour. See, there's no standards yet in the wind turbine industry like there are in automobiles and appliances. A good example would be the MPG rating on cars and the energy guides on your appliances. So while getting a rating system as mandatory would completely eliminate these inflated claims, it would also do something that really none of us want right now. It would bring the power companies and their lobbyists to the discussion on the table. Those people, with all their money, they'd be trying to insert restrictive language into any government involvement. So while we might think that the government mandating testing at 30 miles an hour is a good thing, you're going to have ExxonMobil, trust me. You're going to have Monsanto, more than likely. And you're going to have all the grid companies, whatever initials they're going by now, you're going to have them sitting right there. And they're going to be putting language in like, if you put a wind turbine on your house, it has to be far enough away that if the blades fly apart at 70 miles an hour, that you won't hit another house. Or that they're unsightly, or that they're noisy, or anything to keep from putting a wind turbine, or solar panels for that matter, up on your roof and costing these bastards money. They're going to try to limit who has wind power legally. So we don't want them. But if we had them, and we had a mandate, there wouldn't be any of these 70-mile-an-hour claims. In fact, currently, a wind turbine manufacturer, even a seller, can make any claim they want about performance legally, 100% legally. So 70 miles an hour, 80 miles an hour, 100 miles an hour, even rating their performance on Neptune, 100% legal. Despicable? Yes. Misleading? Absolutely. Bad business? Yes. Legal? Illegal, I should say. Illegal? Nope, not illegal. They can do what they want. So it might piss us off, but it's legal. Now, honestly, very few areas of the country may get 70-mile-an-hour winds kind of sort of regularly. But here, and I'm in wind zone 5, just barely, I've had the turbines hit that like 3 times, maybe 4. I'll do a little bit more on that a little later. A little later. It's a long video, guys. That's why I'm scripted. The wind turbine industry could profit, though. Now listen to this. Everybody. The The wind turbine industry could profit by creating their own agency that would establish a standard, like 30 miles an hour for rating performance. Their own agency. That means that the people that hate each other, Thermodyne and Missouri Wind, they got to get together, and the guys in their basements like Tony, they got to get together. They got to pay a fee. They got to create an agency because they got to pay a fee in order to pay for the testing. They've got to find a wind turbine, a wind tunnel, do their proper testing, label it, have a nice certified emblem, that kind of thing. When you do that, you also have a little bit of money left over to hire lobbyists or at least a representative to go to, say, Des Moines, Iowa. If Des Moines is saying, well, we don't want solar panels on the roofs of the houses. Go and show them why. Be another voice at the table other than the grid company whose only interest is keeping you on the grid and dependent on them and beholding to them monthly, which puts you right back in the slave cycle. Because I'll tell you what, the big grid companies are going to continue to sponsor legislation that restricts or bans wind turbines and solar panels from every county and every municipality they can. So anyway, installing my turbines as the manufacturer instructed with the addition of the massive battery bank, my power production is below abysmal. What did this guy that loves Thermodyne just say? My power production now, with the battery bank I have, is below abysmal. One turbine, the one with a loose blade, the newer one, it produces 1.3 amps of power at 20 miles an hour. The best one is the very first one, and it at 20 miles an hour is only doing about 4 amps of power. Now I've got $3,000. I've got a $3,000 investment in this. I could have bought one more forklift battery to take up the slack or 15 more solar panels with that money. So I've got to look at it and try to change it, fix it, do whatever I can. Okay, so while I was making my big, horrible, awful trip back home here with Monty the Manza, I had an opportunity to visit and spend several days with Jeff Harmon at his Missouri Wind and Solar. He showed me his turbines and their output, his electronics, his research and development, and everything that goes into a real non-basement dwelling business. It was impressive. But Jeff and his family were far more impressive. Although I was an antagonistic visitor, pre-inclined to favor Thermodyne, he treated me like an old friend. He helped me through some car trouble, helped me get a car to make the trip home here while my car was getting fixed, and even insisted I stay with him instead of a motel. Personally, what I found is an honest, genuine person and an honest, genuine family and people that mirror the ideals and the morals that I was brought up with. Also found a new friend. Now the business was equally impressive. Over 80% of their energy needs come from the very wind and solar equipment they sell to the public. And since, like most people that have a business, they spend most of their time at their store, their home is not wind or solar powered. And mine wouldn't be either if I had their business or any business. Let me say that again. Because they spend most of their time at the store, because the store is a show place, they haven't taken the time or the money because it's expensive. I got over 20 grand in this. They haven't taken the time or the money to wire their home because they don't spend a lot of time at their home. And that's the only reason. But the store is a showplace of what is possible. Jeff maintains an active research and development department, always looking for ways to improve and tweak their products and to bring you new products. He's got some stuff coming out that he showed me and didn't tell me not to say anything about, but I'm not going to. But he's got some stuff in the works and some products that are right there now that he's going to be selling that are just impressive. Now, talking about impressive and knowledge and research and development, that brings me to a couple other points about my wind power system. All right, here's where you guys have to wake up. Let me make some room here. Just throw stuff. By the way, I meant to mention, you might notice that the Eco Ranch is in a horrible mess. Well, I'm sorry, that's construction, and something about redheads, we tend to start 37 projects and never finish one, but when we finish them all together, so I'm sorry about the mess, but that's part of my construction. So, oh, and I'm a hideous artist. I am terrible. As an artist, I make a good cook. That's a wind turbine and that's a battery. Just in case you can't tell. Now, when we're talking about DC power, and a lot of wind turbines are AC, and especially the ones, well, a lot of them now are AC. Let's just leave it at that. 3-wire AC, and then they go to a rectifier. You either put a bridge rectifier up on the pole, or you run the wires down, put a bridge rectifier somewhere else. I think. Don't take my word for that one. But at any rate, I wanted DC. DC is simple, and I know if you're like me and don't know a whole lot going in, like I didn't know a whole lot, DC is simpler to understand. We've all had cars. If you're my age, you worked on them a lot, installed stereos and things. So you think you know DC power. Well, we don't know a lot about it, or as much as we think. DC power has to flow in a loop from any appliance or a light. The loop should be continuous and unbroken, okay? That means, and I'm not going to draw a line here, that your positive power has to come down to your positive, but it also has to be able to get return. And again, if I'm saying flow to and from and I'm a little off, bear with me, the concept is correct even though my verbiage might not be. Power's got to come down here and it's got to go back there. It's got to go in that way. It should be continuous and unbroken. But if it's broken, like for example you put a splice in, care should be taken that the brake, I'm going to throw something at that chicken to shut her up. There we go. Care should be taken that the brake doesn't restrict the flow of restrict the flow of current, I should say. Because any restriction will limit and effectively dam up the current, allowing only the amount of current to make the complete continuous loop that is the size of the restriction. In other words, if you're using a 4.0 wire, which is the size of my thumb, and we're not going to do it, but if you were, from here, but right about here you're going to splice it, or down here just before the battery you're going to splice it, and that connection where you splice it, the connection itself is the size of number 12 wire. You can use 4.0 wire from here and up there, but because of that connection you're only going to get performance of a number 12 wire. Number 12 wire is fairly common in a house. It's a little thick for a house, but you're going to get that performance. You're not going to get the performance that huge fat wire should give you because you've got a restriction in it. It dams up. A restriction, a splice, an improper connection in your splice will create a dam, and you're only going to let so much power through. Your appliance, therefore, or your wind turbine, will only perform as though you have run that wire the whole length. Now, I'm oversimplifying it, but like I say, I'm going to oversimplify a couple other things in this. The premise is sound enough for this and you can understand it. Now, Thermodyne instructed me to use, Thermodyne instructed me to use a flexible wire up here, and that wire is going to run down the pole and come out the bottom. Now in my case what I've done is I've cut the pole and put a T in it, so my flexible wire comes down and comes out. But, it comes out and then it connects here through a splice and runs to the positive. But for the negative, Thermodyne said just connect a wire to the pole. I think they say the bottom of the pole now. I put mine right up here. But wherever you put it, you put that on, bring it to your negative. Now that's what they said to do. And as an AC electrician, which I'm a pretty decent AC electrician, that made perfect sense to me. It was incorrect, but it made sense. And it made sense right up until Jeff pointed out to me that a complete loop was required. Now that cut you just saw, what I just found out was my whiteboard here. I can't erase it. So I'm just going to use the, continue to use the green. Jeff pointed out to me that I need a complete loop. That means that I have to also connect a flexible wire to the negative and run that flexible wire to my battery, so that I have to have two flexible wires coming out to make that complete loop. Now, I've done one wind turbine that way. That was the one I didn't show you earlier. And just that one thing, taking the negative off of here, off of the pole, and connecting it to the alternator itself, doubled my power output. Let me say that again, so that the basement dwellers that are sitting there ready to debunk the hell out of what I'm saying. It doubled my power output. No, I'm not going to show you meters and graphs, because you might say I jiggled the wire. You might say I used a different bus bar. You might say a whole bunch of things. But the truth of the matter is I don't have a dog in the fight. I'm not making any profit off of this. I'm telling you the truth. It doubled my output. Those of you that are looking to live like this, it doubled my output. That's what you need to do. You need to have a negative directly off of the alternator. Now, in my case, with all my turbines, the graphite lubricant that Thermodyne recommended I use to keep the turbine turning in the wind actually gunked up the pole right where that turbine moved. So at the contact points that would take the pole, which is now negative, which is a bad negative because galvanized is not a real good ground anyway, or conductor. It took that gunked it up so that the 2 points where the bracket are turning on the pole actually had the negative connection conductivity reduced dramatically. All the power that was able to reach my batteries was only what was allowed to pass through the bracket. The bracket, as we know, your pole sits here and goes through here like so. And primarily it's turning from here. This was all gunked up. It was all gunked up here. Just like I just gunked this up. And all the power I was able to get was what was being allowed through there. Now, the turbine I made the modifications to was also one that wouldn't turn. It wouldn't turn real good at all unless there was a real good strong 20-mile-an-hour wind blowing. Now, Thermodyne's developed a roller bearing gizmo to help their turbines move a little easier, and I think it costs about 25 bucks. I don't know if it works because I haven't tested it, but it looks like it should work. But Jeff gave me a simple lock ring. Just a simple little lock ring. You raise the bracket up just a little bit, just enough to take the pressure off of there. You put the lock ring in, then he gave me a couple of silicone rings to go on top of the lock ring. And I'm not sure of how much this cost. It may, by the time you get a decent lock ring, like his was, I think, stainless, at least galvanized, but it looks stainless to me. It probably was about the same price as the roller bearings, but with less moving parts, it comes right up under kissing the problem. Keep it simple, stupid, like I always say. Keep it simple, keep it simple. If simple will work, don't make something that looks like Rube Goldberg was there. So that particular solution that Jeff showed me could not be simpler. The turbine will now turn around in the slightest breeze. In fact, it's the first one to turn. Now, I checked the power output of this one, which also was putting out 1.3 amps at 20 miles an hour. And at 10 miles an hour, half the speed, 10 miles an hour, it was producing 1.6 amps with just that, just the changes that I made. Double the output at half the wind, but still, that figures out to something like about 20 watts. Part of what we pay for when we buy any product at all is knowledge. Knowledge of how to do this. We want to be able to go back to the people we buy it from and not have them pick up the package Well, it says here it's for use on whiteboards, glass, and most non-porous surfaces. Well, I can read. Don't do that, you dumbass. Do you have some experience? If you don't, get somebody that does. And if you don't, tell me, well, I'm sorry, about all I can do is read this. But don't pick it up and do that. You want knowledge. Anybody can read. On this part here, Thermodyne fell down. Now, we all have faults, so I'm not kicking them. We all have faults, we all make mistakes, we can't do everything 100%. But they should have known better, after being in business as long as they have, than to tell their consumers to use the pole as a negative connection. They should have known better, and the only excuse is the same one I have. As an AC electrician, it sounded plausible. As a DC electrician, which I'm not, it don't work. Now I pay 70 cents a foot for number, goodbye, and the horses are off. I pay 70 cents a foot for number 6 welding wire, and that's flexible enough to use for the turbines. Now the 10-foot piece I use to get to, just pretend it's still there, to get to my T, that 10-foot piece to get to the T and come out where I could do a decent splice cost me $7, but it made my turbine productive. Just not productive enough. Okay, so you don't have to look at me right now. Jeff also sent me home with a set of his Raptor blades. Now those are the white blades up there, seven blades. The retail price on those was, I think, $150, $149.90, some, whatever, $150. I installed them on this turbine, the one that's got the lock ring on it. This turbine now starts producing power at under 10 miles an hour, and this one turbine is producing over 50% more amperage at 20 miles an hour than its sister, which is the one I said earlier was my number one, the first turbine I put up. It's actually in the number 3 position, but the first turbine I put up. It puts out 50% more amperage than the 1,000 watt that is its sister, that is performing very well. It's the highest performer I have. That one now outperforms it by 50%. And it's a combination of doing the wiring right and Jeff's blades, and I would have to say Jeff's blades did more than anything. The blades, the Raptor blades, are far heavier than what I have. And that's an issue that I'm going to address pretty quickly here. So, advantage and higher price goes to Missouri Wind and Solar, because if I were to buy their comparable DC powered unit with the 7 blades, it would be $369. Thermodyne's unit with the 6 blades is $299. But there's more to it than just the price difference. The higher performing Raptor blades come with the Missouri Wind and Solar kit. To add these to the Thermodyne turbine, which would then give you more power, but probably, and I have to say probably because I do not have a Missouri Wind and Solar unit up here, they would probably improve the performance just as much. Not quite to the point where Missouri Wind and Solar is. That would cost $150 to add those blades to the other turbine, and that would eliminate any price advantage that all Thermodyne has, and you still have the 1/8-inch metal and their PMA, which may or may not be better. I can't comment on that directly, other than what I saw at his business, which was impressive. And snap! Now, honestly, I'm not qualified to discuss AC versus DC turbines, so I'm not discussing them beyond that, beyond saying that for my 12-volt system, I have to use thicker wires. That's the nature of the beast. It's a law of physics. And those cost far more than the thinner wires that an AC turbine would need. So if you're using an AC turbine and running the bridge rectifier at some other point, your wire costs will be less to that point. Again, that's something to take up with the guy that's selling it to you, provided that he's not living in his basement reading from the back of a Missouri Wind and Solar brochure. My turbines are 12 volt. They use number 6 wire that runs from 15 feet for the one that's closest to the batteries to 45 feet. from the one that's the furthest. I'm also using all retail prices and the comparable 12-volt Missouri wind and solar turbine, like I said, in the pricing. So my wiring then is $1.40 a foot for the 2 strands, positive and negative. If I were to run the welding wire the full length with no splice, it'd be $1.40 a foot. Now I'm only using the welding wire to come down because I happen to have already run number 6 wire to the turbines, so I'm using a decent splice where, if I can keep this here, I'm splicing the wires together like that and pinching them and securing them. So I'm not doing it like this with that. So, to recap, after 5 years here on the roof, in zone 5 winds and a desert in here is where I'm going to put the 2 videos I shot up on the roof. Boy, you can tell that I'm not scripted, and hey, that's a good thing. Or that I am scripted, rather. Because it's a good thing. I'm trying to get the point. This turbine is what I call my number 5 turbine. It's just in the number 5 position. Supposed to be a 1,000 watt Thermodyne turbine, rated at 1,000 watts at 70 miles an hour, which we've already covered. We're not going to cover that again. But we're going to look at the quality of it, or not the quality so much as the wear and tear on it. It's been up for over 3 years. The blades are showing some crystallization, but they're up. They're doing well. You'll notice there's a bend. I don't know if you can see the angle. Let me get sideways of the angle. There's the angle of the bend on the blades from me setting it down. Now I'm being careless with them because these blades are not going back up. I'm replacing them with a set of Raptor blades from Missouri Wind and Solar because Jeff wanted me to test it out. So they're bent, but they're not broken. Pardon me, I'm still recovering from a cold. Now just a glance at these blades. You'll see there isn't any damage to them. And these were up when I got hit with that 90 mile an hour haboob a couple years back. And this turbine actually came down after that because this was one where the PMA burned out. The explanation from Thermodyne was magnetic dust got in there. Probably a better explanation is that they simply overspun, heated up, and burned out. Now, it burned out at 90 miles an hour, so let's not be too critical of Thermodyne over that. Looking at the hub, here's that thin metal on the hub, and I'm not sure if it's coming off here or not, but you can see a slight overall bend in it. So the hub is bent inwards. I guess it'd be somewhere in the neighborhood of an 1/8 of an inch. It's bent inwards over these years. So there that part is true. That does happen. Now, here's a look at the bracket. This is another point, is that the bracket's the same thickness of metal and the bracket will bend. Now this, as I said, stood up to a 90 mile an hour wind. I don't really see a bend. Are you folks seeing a slight twist there? There may be a slight twist. I'm just going to go up and down like this. A slight twist that hasn't affected the performance, I don't think. However, the reason we took this one down, this one's not spinning. It's not turning on its axis. In other words, this is spinning, but it's not turning on its axis. So we're going to do the some of the changes that I've talked about to this and put it back up. So hi, so we're up on the roof here at the Eco Ranch, and I'm going to go over some things. Hi, we're up on the roof here at the Eco Ranch, and I'm going to shoot some video of the wind turbines as they sit right now. It's a beautiful day. There's not a drop of wind, so let's get into it. This is my, well, I number these 1 through 6. This is my number 1 turbine. It's been up for not quite 5 years now. And what we're looking at, what we want to look at here is that hub. And let's get right on that hub. You can see that it's been rounded just a little bit, kind of pushed into a cone a tiny bit. Now that's one of the objections people have, because as you can clearly see, that's 1/8 inch steel. Now also going to the bracket, I'll back up from the bracket. The bracket is the same 1/8 inch steel. Another complaint is that can bend easily. Now you'll notice in all of these, this is the only one I'm going to point out to you, but in all of these brackets, you'll notice not a one is bent. I don't have that problem, but you have to remember when anybody's showing you something or reviewing something that it's what they're reviewing is how it performs in their conditions. In my case, in my desert and my wind and my humidity. I don't have a bend. Will it bend? I certainly can take it down and bend it with my bare hands, and I'm not all that strong. Now, we'll go on to my number 2. Number 2 also has been up nearly 5 years. Now, first thing you'll notice about number 2, double plate, double hub, excuse me. Now that, I did that on the recommendation of Thermodyne, and if you know anything about metallurgy, you'll know that the double hub doesn't double the strength because you don't have the molecular bonds that extend the full 1/4 inch. The molecular bonds extend only to the 1/8 inch, so you have 2 1/8 inch plates, not a 1/4 inch, nor the strength a 1/4 inch. But the interesting thing about this one is that excuse me, that was what you call an old man brain fart there. The interesting thing about this one is that because of the extra weight, the flywheel effect is quite apparent there, and we'll get into the flywheel effect at a different point in this video. Now that's number 2. Number 3 is the original one. This is the first one. This has been up for 5 years, but since it's painted green, you can tell that it has been taken down once, and I painted it green, all of these green, because Thermodyne gave me the green paint to paint them with. The only reason that these have been down, and I believe it was these 3 were the 3 that burned out in that 90-mile-an-hour wind gust we had, and again, we'll get into that in a bit. But as you can see, the hub is just slightly bent, and there isn't any damage here. Number 4 here has been up for a year. This is one of those highly vaunted 1685 watt at 70-mile-an-hour turbines. You can clearly see the, well, there you get a little bit better look when the sun hits that hub that it is in fact just 2 pieces of 1/4 inch, not the 3/16. It almost looks like that bracket's a little thinner. But at any rate, it's been up. I'm going to show you the blades on this one. Outside of looking not real pretty any longer from the dirt and from spinning, I don't notice, well, maybe a tiny bit came off in my finger there, but I don't notice any real deterioration here. Now we're going to skip number 5 because that's the one I modified, and this is the last one, is number 6. And I left number 6 facing right straight at us. And number 6, something I just noticed, number 6 has the 3/16 inch hub, and also a much bigger hub. Let's walk back to number 5. I never noticed that before. Nope, number 5 does not have, or number 4 here does not have the bigger hub. Now I just noticed that. That's significant because this one here spins quite easily. It spins in virtually no wind. Now up until I just saw this just this second, I always thought that the fact that it was spinning was because I don't have it wired exactly right, and I don't know that there's much of a load being put on it. Okay, I got a loose blade there too. We'll tighten that blade later. Let's give this another spin. If you heard that noise below the chicken, let's hear it again. It has made that noise since day 1. But again, the blades are good and solid. The bracket doesn't appear to be bent at all, even though it's still the 1/8 inch. That's 1/4 inch. Gives me a nice flywheel, but it's not weighted on the blades. It's just weighted on the flywheel. I'm gonna go back here. Let's give this one a spin, the same kind of spin. no noise, and the spinning is about. And we're back. Blades are one of the hot topics among the trash videos of the wind turbine war. Personally, I haven't had a single blade break, nor do I see any evidence of them deteriorating yet beyond where I said, well, they feel brittle and I'm replacing them anyway with either Raptor or Panatera from Thermodyne, whichever, you know. He's supposed to be sending me a set. If he doesn't send me a set, I'm just going to go ahead and get the Raptors. And mainly I'm going to get them because Jeff is a friend, not because necessarily I think they're better than the Panatera, because I haven't tested the Panatera yet. I'll buy them because Jeff's a friend, and I buy from friends and people that give me good service. But while I was there with Jeff, he gave me the opportunity to try to break by bending one of the blades I have and one of his Raptor blades. Now, I couldn't break the Raptor. I'm a little stronger than average, and I bent it, and I couldn't break the Raptor. I got it, I don't know, it's something like here. It didn't break. But I did break my blade at about 40 degrees. It snapped. But here's the point behind the blades bending and breaking like that. It looks impressive to do, but honestly, nothing in the air when they're spinning bends or tries to artificially break the blades while they're up there in the air spinning. So I found the entire blade breaking puzzle puzzling. And there's a lot of videos. It's not just Jeff showing me. He shows me because of these stupid videos from, and there are, and I'm going to interject this here off of my script. There's like 3 kinds of people that are doing videos on YouTube about the wind turbines. There are the people with a dog in the fight, Thermodyne and Missouri Wind and Solar, and includes their resellers, people like the guy in his basement over on the East Coast, and you know, others. They got a dog in the fight. They're doing videos. You've got their soldiers. And I call them soldiers. These are the people living in their mother's basements waiting for their mom to bring them a sandwich. They got nothing better to do than live life vicariously over the internet because they just don't. And they just are waiting. And they're doing all these videos and saying, well, what happens if we do this? What happens? And it's coming out with these scenarios that are just really weird. Or they're doing really goofy things like getting in their car and driving by somebody's house, taking videos of it, and accusing them of eating dead babies and things like that. I mean, take those people and just toss them away. Number 3, you've got the geeks, and I use that term in a good way. You've got these guys that are hobbyists that are really in love with the wind turbine business or aeronautics aeronautical engineering for whatever reason. They're in love with it. And they are doing all this testing and that because they really, really want to, number 1, know who's better, what's better, and can they improve on it by geeking around with it. And those are your 3 players. Now, I still find the blade breaking thing puzzling, except that if you're geeking around, you want to know what it takes to break them. And if you're a basement dweller looking to cause trouble, you want to cause trouble by saying, see, they break at a funny place. Well, yeah, they break, but nobody's up on your roof when it's spinning trying to break them. But if somebody did want to make one blade look particularly bad, I mean really, really bad, they can do several things. They can take and cut the back of the blade with a hacksaw, and it'll snap easily then, because if you've cut it 2/3 of the way through, that's an old kung fu movie trick. Or they can place them in a freezer for a few days, maybe spray them with Freon, or dip it in liquid nitrogen if you got access to that. That would certainly cause a failure. But it doesn't cause a failure that occurs in normal usage. And while I'm on the blade breaking thing, again, off script, there's been a lot said about carbon fiber in the Thermodyne blades. When I broke the blades, and I did 3 breaks, when I broke the blades, I saw no evidence of carbon fiber as I know it. Okay? When I've used carbon fiber or seen carbon fiber, I've actually been able to see the fibers both on the surface and, you know, if you break it or cause a failure of some sort. I've seen the fibers. I didn't see any evidence of that. But I'm no chemist. I don't know what advances have been made in carbon fiber. The fact that I didn't see what I identify as carbon fiber doesn't mean it's not there in another form. But I didn't see it. Now here's a point I found most interesting about blades in general and how they affect your power output. And I may not be exactly technically accurate, but the gist of what I have to say is accurate. Wind turbine alternators and car engines have something more in common than you think. And for that, we're going to go back to the whiteboard and ruin it some more. Now, we're back. And let me say this again, because the basement dwellers are out there ready to jump all over me on this. I am not an artist. I have no artistic skill whatsoever, so I had to label these things so you could tell what it is. A car engine, let's start there. It has cylinders. Let's use 8, for example, and 8 cylinders, 8 pistons. These pistons go up and down by using the energy released by exploding gasoline in a closed cylinder. Goes up and down. Then, as they're going up and down, your camshaft has these notches in it. In case of an 8-cylinder one, I know it's got 8 or 16, but anyway, it's got these notches in it. The piston's attached to this, and as they go around and round, they crank this thing just like a crank going around and round. So they take that vertical energy, and they transfer the vertical energy into a horizontal energy that's spinning, and that's how it works. Now, an alternator has a core that spins around, and it creates an energy field by using several magnets placed around the inside of the casing. In this case, let's also use 8 magnets. Now, I know there's like 16 or there's more. I don't know how many there are, but let's use 8 as an example. Just like we're using, instead of a V6 or a 4-cylinder, we used an 8-cylinder car. We're going to use 8 cylinders or 8 magnets in our alternator. The field makes the core turn around. The core is taking the energy and making it an energy that we can attach a pulley or something to utilize that energy. Now, if you turn an alternator, and I should have had an alternator here, but if you turn an alternator like this, you're holding the alternator and then you turn the pulley on the alternator. I lost track of what I was doing. Hello. Yeah, turn an alternator and you can feel each magnet pass the inner coil. You can feel each magnet pass by the inner coil that you are turning. You can feel it in a click, 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 click kind of thing. Now the wind turbine folks call this cogging. And the more powerful a magnet is, the more pronounced the cogging is. A bigger magnet here, the cogging is going to be, it'll almost feel like it's grabbing the coil as you turn it around. A car engine also has a cogging effect when each cylinder fires. Coming back to my camshaft here, that camshaft is rotating around, but it's rotating around and around 4 times, and then it fires 1 time. So here it goes around and around, fire, and it goes a little faster, fire, and it goes a little faster. That creates the same cogging effect. This would be extremely noticeable in a car engine, except for one thing. But hold on though, I got one more example for you. If you've ever had a water well, here's my water well, you can see the trees, with a pump down deep and no expansion tank or bladder tank installed, you would see a pulsing from the pump when you turned it on. It will turn on, it'll hit the pressure, and it'll turn off about 2 or 3 times a second. This is also cogging to an effect that we could call cogging. Now in a water well, for example, by adding, and I know my back's to you, but by adding an 80-gallon bladder tank here that takes 80 gallons of water. Now the pump, instead of pumping 1 gallon or 2 gallons in these pipes here and then spitting it out as it hits the pressure and turns off, hits the pressure, turns off, hits the pressure and turns off, it's now putting 80 gallons of water in here and then hitting the pressure and turning off. And it's going to stay off until the pressure is released from that huge tank, then it's going to turn back on again. So it's reduced from 2 or 3 times a second to like once a minute if you're running the water steadily, or less depending on how much stored pressure you have. And more importantly, the pressure that you have coming out of the system when you have a big bladder tank is more reliable. If you don't live in the country, I just might as well have been going wah, 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 wah. because you don't know that, but if you live in the country, you understand that. That's why I'm using 3 examples. Now, a car engine, getting back to the engine and cogging in the engine, it uses a very simple component to reduce the cogging, a flywheel. A flywheel is a very heavy orb of metal that mounts out here. And honestly, they look about like that. Big and thick and heavy. Sometimes weighs 200 to 300 pounds in many cases. That flywheel stores the inertia from the energy that's released when these cylinders fire. That weight goes into the flywheel, and the energy is stored as inertia. And a good example of inertia is, for example, Monty the Monza out there. If we tried to push Monty, if Monty the Mazda was running at about 5 miles an hour right straight at us, and we went and put our shoulder to it to stop it, it would take X amount of energy to stop it. If there was a semi-truck that was doing the same thing, it would take Y amount of energy, or X cubed or whatever. It takes a lot more energy because what's the difference between Monty the Monza and a semi-truck? The weight. More weight, more inertia. More weight, more inertia that is storable. And when you've got that inertia stored, it's released by the flywheel as it spins at the same rate that it's stored, it's released. So it's an equal thing, and that's the law of physics. It's an equal thing. It's released by the flywheel as it spins with the engine in a constant manner because of the size and weight of the flywheel. The cogging is still there, but the stored inertia that's consistently released by the centrifugal motion mitigates or eliminates the effect in an engine. That's why your engines run nice and smooth instead of spinning 2 or 3 times a second, which is what they would do. More size equals more inertia storage, and more stored inertia softens the intermittent energy, or cogging. Now, you guys that are out there wanting to get into sustainable living and have wind turbines, this is all directed at you, so wake up. Now, the alternator. By nature, like the well pump in the car engines, the alternator with its 8, more or less, magnets, also cogs. Now, with very little weight on the alternator, very little inertia, and thus very little energy is stored in a flywheel. And a flywheel doesn't have to be a flywheel. It can be, for example, a hub and blades. With no stored inertia, when a load is applied to the alternator, now I'm talking now about the blades I have from Thermodyne with that little thin hub, the lightweight blades. When you apply a load to the alternator, the flywheel effect is not present. There is no stored inertia, or there is a tiny bit of stored inertia. The load is immediately felt by a slowing of the blades, and if you have a wind turbine and you turn them off in a heavy wind, you turn them on, you hear that as it slows down. That's the load. That's the flywheel effect right there. And if you apply enough load, you'll actually see the blades. You'll actually see in the blades the action as each magnet hits the coil as a cogging effect, like so. By adding weight to the hub, now, here's my hub with the holes in it, and the blades are going on here. Like I said, I'm a great artist. By adding weight to the hub here, like I showed you on the one wind turbine I have with the dual hub, but more importantly, by adding more weight to the entire... Well, as if this wasn't long enough, the battery shut off or something happened and I lost, well, where I cut off was showing you the back of my head. Bottom line is, more weight on the blades creates a heavier flywheel and a larger flywheel, storing more inertia. The bigger it is, the more inertia you store. The more inertia you store, it smooths out the motion, number one, and it also allows you to develop more power going around, so that you don't have that when you turn on the turbine, or as the wind increases, you don't have the magnets pulling and causing that cogging effect. Now the explanation may be a bit strange. The effect is simple physics, and I may not have it exactly right, but I have it good enough for us all to understand. We need to have a little heavier wheel and hub there, or not wheel and hub, a little heavier blade and hub there. Now when I added the heavier Raptor blades to my Thermodyne wind turbine, it made an entirely different and far more efficient unit, thanks to that extended flywheel effect. The wider blades help too, of course. Now Thermodyne's offering a wider, heavier blade that the combatants in the wind turbine war said he ripped off from Missouri Wind and Solar, along with several other things, like a charge controller. Now, while copying somebody else's intellectual property is despicable, without a patent or other protection, it's also 100% legal. It's just morally wrong. I won't comment as to who copied who, other than to say just what I did. Also, if an idea would improve my product and using it was legal, I'd probably do the same, and you know what? So would you. Okay, let's finish this where we started it, in front of Monty the Monza, because if it wasn't for Monty, I wouldn't have spent 3 days with a rooster. I wouldn't have spent 3 days with Jeff Harmon at Missouri Wind and Solar, and I also wouldn't have been able to drive 200 miles through the rain with no brakes. That's fixed now. But anyway, let's get to my 5-year review of all of my Thermodyne products. Now the price points have changed in the last 4 years. When I was first buying my wind turbines, we were on a shoestring and every cent mattered to us. Thermodyne wind turbines advertised at 1,000 watt turbines were a lot less money, so we bought them. And they actually charged our tiny battery bank then. Yes, compared to today's Missouri Wind and Solar kits, the hub metal is thinner at 1/8 of an inch. And they did bend over the years. They kind of bowed just a tiny bit over the years. The bracket metal is also 1/16 of an inch thicker than Missouri Wind and Solar's and should be prone to bending. Now I haven't seen that in mine, but it should be. Missouri Wind uses 3/16. They use an 1/8 inch. That 1/16 of an inch makes a huge difference. There's a video out there where a redneck wind tunnel was used. Very effectively, I should add. I'm not making fun of it. It was used to demonstrate the performance of a Thermodyne wind turbine. A redneck wind tunnel is a wind turbine mounted on a pickup truck and driven at varying speeds. At about 45 miles an hour, the Thermodyne blades did flutter and stop producing power. This is caused by the lightweight and very thin blade tips. It was probably designed into the blades to prevent the alternators from burning out. But the blades in real winds on the roof only flutter out about 60% of the time. Sometimes they recover due to something inside the wind, maybe a little anomaly, a dead spot, whatever. They recover and they take off. And when they take off, they roar. 3 of mine did this during a horrible, steady 90-mile-per-hour wind we had about 3 years ago. I didn't have the turbines fused then. That was probably my error, but I didn't have them fused then. Now I've got 30 amps fuses on them now. But they went right into the battery bank. The 90-mile-an-hour wind burned out 3 alternators, the 3 that raced up to that speed. Thermodyne repaired them for very little cost to us. In fact, I'm not sure he might have done it for free. I can't remember now. But the wind did burn them out. Them actually spinning at 90 miles an hour burned out the turbines. Now, it's my fault for not having them fused, but since I've added the fuses, I also added the huge forklift batteries. Since then, I've never had a single one of the fuses blow, despite the fact that we did have one short 70-mile-an-hour wind blast. And yeah, in that particular one, all the turbines fluttered, recovered, and took off like crazy. I wrote something about that and then removed the comment, but we did have a... Pardon me, I'm still recovering from a cold, thanks to Monty. But we did have that one blast. Now, my Thermodyne wind turbines have worked, sort of. The theoretical power output at 70. Now my Thermodyne wind turbines have worked, sort of. The theoretical output of 70 miles an hour may be as high as they claim in real large letters in all the advertising. But if the blades do not float out and if the alternators do not burn out, then maybe at 70 miles an hour you'll get 1,000 watts or 500 watts or 1685 or 2,000. And maybe if you put them on Neptune in those 300 kilometer mile an hour winds, you might get a lot more power. But we're not on Neptune and we don't get 70 mile an hour winds. In real life, they're producing very few amps in most winds, enough to slow the drain on your batteries, not charge them on a standalone basis. That's if you take and install them per the manufacturer's instructions. Make the changes I described in this video, a proper negative cable installation, reducing the weight on the top bracket, and even replacing the stock blade set, and they'll produce enough power to make you happy. They will. The problem is, the cost of making these changes would make the Thermodyne wind turbines considerably more expensive than the Missouri wind and solar turbines, and you'd still have that alternator that would burn out when subjected to winds that equal the speed their wattage is rated at. In other words, 70 miles an hour. You're still going to lose the alternators. I don't have experience with Missouri wind and solar directly yet, so I can't tell you theirs won't burn out, but I can tell you that from what I see in the design, I'd give 5 to 1 they won't burn out. The bottom line is, if we were comparing wind turbines as beers, Missouri wind and solar would be Heineken, and Thermodyne would be Milwaukee's Best. Now there's a place for Heineken and Milwaukee's Best in the market. We know the place. If you're thirsty like I am right now, then a Milwaukee's Best is what you want. But if you want to sit down and savor a beer, you want a Heineken. You get what you pay for, or a little less. And as long as you know what's going on, as long as you know that you get what you pay for, and these are price pointed accordingly, either one's going to look good on your roof and they'll produce some measure of power. Now, stepping off of my script here for a second, if the costs that I have heard that the components cost to make, Thermodyne can lower their price and still make a substantial profit. That would price point them at a point where, you get down to $199, $185, something like that. Now the power they produce, just like my Milwaukee's Best beer, it's doing the job. It's just not doing the job that Heineken would do. Or, it's in plain English, price point them a bit lower, and that's, you get what you pay for, and you've got some wattage. Missouri Wind has lowered their prices, and to me it seems like it's a great value, strictly because of the blades, because remember, I don't have any experience on the alternator yet. So for those of you that are building a sustainable off-grid life and are sincerely looking for a reliable, efficient wind turbine to augment your power, dollar for dollar today, unless you're on a tight shoestring, personally, I'll recommend the products developed and sold by Jeff Harmon at Missouri Wind and Solar. If you have now, or you decide to buy a Thermodyne wind turbine, it will perform. And when you're ready, make the changes I talked about here and you'll get the most out of it. I'm going to make those changes and I'm going to live with them, and as something happens to my alternators, I will replace them, and that's when I'll try one. The first one, I'm going to try Missouri Wind and Solar, and then we'll go from there. Now, this is very important, I think. No one's paying me for my opinions. No one's giving me free products, sex, drugs, rock and roll, beer, or anything to say any of this. It's all from my experience with the products here in my desert, and from my long visit to Missouri Wind's facility, as well as my actual experience with all three of the companies I've mentioned. You might have a completely different experience. Just use my opinions as a baseline for your choices. Now, I'm also removing my 3 videos about Thermodyne wind turbines. I'm doing this because I feel like I produced them with a little bit too much bias. I was asked to do the videos as a favor to Thermodyne, so I purposely built the bias into them. I haven't changed my mind that dramatically. I want to make that very, very clear. I haven't drank anybody's Kool-Aid. Nobody's paid me off. None of that stuff. I haven't changed that dramatically. It's just that I see things a little clearer, and I want to be very sure that when I produce a video here, it gives you the most information and the most accurate information that I feel I can do. If my information is not accurate, it's because I didn't know the accurate information at the time. It's not because somebody influenced me. Now, another reason I've removed the videos, the 3 Thermodyne videos, the videos are tainted by the purchased views and comments from VAGEX and SEO Clerks or SEC, whatever it is. And I didn't authorize that. I don't want phony shit on my videos. We're going to keep it real or we're not going to keep it at all. That's why I pulled them. That's why I'm doing this video right here. The whole wind turbine wars and all this bull roar that's going on, we need to keep it real. Nobody's a baby eater. You don't need to be throwing dead pigs in somebody's front yard. You don't need to be driving by somebody's house and terrorizing their wife. If somebody did that to me, I'd be hunting them down right now. And you can take that to the bank. And I may be an old man, but I'm not as good as I once was, but I'm as good as I ever was once. Now you drive by my house and I'll show you. The Thermodyne products, they have a place within their price point. Same as Milwaukee's Best does in the beer world. I just don't want my videos to overstate my opinion on where I feel Thermodyne's place in the market should be. Now, I got an idea. I've also got a warning for those that actually have a dog in the fight. That's not you basement dwellers. That's not you basement dwellers, and it's not you clamheads that live out there to bash one company or another, or just sit there and wait for the bloop to go on your computer so you can look and see what somebody said. Here's my idea. To every one of you that's out there that's involved in it, particularly those of you that are tinkering and trying to improve, you need to develop a gear or belt reduction wind turbine generator. 400 or 500 watts of power at 30 miles an hour is not enough, and it's old technology, just like this is old technology. I'd pay $1,000 or more for one wind turbine that produced 500 watts of power at a very low wind speed. And that means developing a 3 or 4 to 1 ratio on a belt or gear reduction system. And it involves long enough blades to handle it. And if you don't get out there and do that, if you don't develop a cooperative, a group to rate the turbines correctly and to get out there and lobby municipalities, if you continue to participate in and encourage cretins living in their mother's basements that live vicariously through the internet to participate in the wind turbine war, somebody else will come along and do it. Carry that to the bank. I have a relative who was an aeronautical engineer for a big 3 automaker. He worked closely with many high-powered businesses internationally, including 2 different venture capitalists. Now, that's that I know of, probably more. He has access to computer geeks like you have never seen. And marketing experts, well, big 3, we're talking some big marketing experts. He also has many, many connections in China and India as well. If he were to want to start a new business involving wind turbines, now he's happily retired and wouldn't, but if he wanted to, he could have $20 to $50 million next week to build a facility here in the U.S. to assemble products, hire Chinese or Indian companies to produce the parts, and a distribution network that could place the products in big box stores, eBay, and everywhere, and advertising people that would make everybody want to have a wind turbine on their roof. This I know because I know this person. And he's got to be one of 1,000 people out there that if they got interested, if they saw how weak the wind turbine market was here domestically because of all the crap that's been going on and all you soldiers out there in your basements that are fighting and creating all this, one of these people is going to step right up and going to snatch this business away from you like that. In plain English, you are one venture capitalist away from being put out of business and buried forever. Now, in view of that, does it make good business sense to continue this foolish war and continue to encourage others to do it for you by proxy? I think we all know the answer to that. Now, folks, this is the last video of this type that I'm going to do. It's the last video on the wind turbines for sure. My whole purpose here in putting these things on the air is to show you how Joe Average does things. You can see flaws in everything I do. I want to encourage people to live this lifestyle. I want to encourage people to get out of debt, live debt-free, live completely free from the slave cycle. I don't want to waste the time I've wasted on the wind turbine wars, and to be very honest with you, I wasted the time on this because I like wind power. I think it's great. And I think there's a place for it, just like T. Boone Pickens did. If T. Boone Pickens didn't like wind power, the Pickens plan, instead of putting 5,000 wind turbines through the wind alley here in Texas, he would have built solar farms. He saw the value of wind power too. My only reason for involving myself in this and for this last, final, long-ass video is because I want everybody to take a good look at what you're doing and step up and let's promote wind power properly. And if you're out there considering buying wind turbines, I hope I've given you a good overview of how things work, what's been going on out there, and where you can spend your money. Thanks a lot, everybody. It's Monty the Monza and Robert Earl out here at the Eco Ranch. We'll see you soon with another